Welcome to When Gen X Ruled the Multiplex, where I dissect the films that played some role in shaping those of us who were born between 1965 and 1980. Today, I'm looking at the 1988 cult favorite, They Live. They Live is based on a 1963 short story by sci-fi author Ray Nelson, 8 o'clock in the morning. It was directed by John Carpenter, who wrote the screenplay as well under the alias Frank Ermitage. A classic overachiever, Carpenter also co-wrote the score with his frequent collaborator Alan Howarth. A drifter arrives in Los Angeles and heads downtown on foot. As with many of the characters in They Live, the drifter's name is never mentioned in the film. He's listed in the credits as Nada, which of course is Spanish for nothing. Nada is played by Roddy Piper, whom all of us Gen X kids reflexively know as Rowdy Roddy Piper, the kilt-wearing Canadian professional wrestler who is one of the most prominent villains of the WWF, now the WWE, throughout the 80s. I am well-versed in 1980s wrestlers because there was a WWF-themed Saturday morning cartoon, Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling, which I watched with surprising regularity. Before his 2015 death from heart failure, Piper dabbled in acting throughout his career. Apart from They Live, his best-known screen appearance is playing the lead in 1988's Hell Comes to Frogtown. He also appears in the chaotic music video for Cyndi Lauper's Goonies Are Good Enough. Nada heads to the unemployment office looking for work, where he's told there's nothing for him. After spending the night on the streets, he drops by a construction site and sweet-talks the foreman into giving him a job. He strikes up a tentative friendship with a fellow worker, Frank, played by Keith David, who starred in John Carpenter's The Thing in 1982. Frank is a former steelworker who was laid off along with many other workers while the executives gave themselves big raises. As a result, he's bitter and cynical, whereas Nada just wants to work hard and follow the rules in pursuit of a better life. After work, Frank takes Nada to a camp for unhoused people where he meets a kindly volunteer named Gilbert, played by Peter Jason, as well as an unnamed drifter played by George Buck Flower. Both actors are frequent collaborators with Carpenter. Peter Jason appeared in the Mouth of Madness, Escape from L.A., Prince of Darkness, Ghosts of Mars, and Village of the Damned, while George Buck Flower appeared in Village of the Damned, Escape from New York, The Fog, and Starman. Across from the camp is an Episcopalian church headed up by a blind preacher played by Raymond St. Jacques. Nada grows suspicious when he spots the preacher having a furtive conversation with Gilbert in the middle of the night. There's a television set at the camp, but the broadcast keeps getting hacked by a rogue signal from a bearded man played by John Lawrence. The bearded man issues a fragmented warning about how an unnamed foe has been broadcasting a signal that alters the consciousness of everyone who hears it. The transmission keeps breaking up, and it all sounds like the deranged rantings of a madman, so no one at the camp pays too much attention to whatever the bearded man is saying. But Nada notices that LAPD helicopters keep hovering over the camp, and there's a growing atmosphere of menace. Suspecting something odd is going on, Nada sneaks into the church and spies on Gilbert having a private conversation with the bearded man. In the back of the church, Nada discovers some chemistry equipment, a bunch of cheap plastic sunglasses, and a secret closet filled with boxes. Written on the walls in big letters is "They Live, We Sleep." That night, the church and the camp are raided by dozens of overly aggressive cops in riot gear. The cops bulldoze the camp and round up everyone they can catch. In the morning, Nada finds the camp razed to the ground as though it had never existed. He retrieves a box from the secret closet inside the church and finds it contains nothing but cheap plastic sunglasses. He trashes the box in an alley but keeps a pair of sunglasses. When he puts the sunglasses on, everything changes. Instead of advertising slogans, the billboards and signs all feature simple commands and messages. No independent thought. Consume. Watch TV. Submit. Buy. Marry and reproduce. Stay asleep. And most strikingly, obey. Famed street artist Shepard Fairey, the man behind the iconic Obama Hope poster, first came into the public eye through his Obey Giant sticker campaign, which began in 1989 and which, in its most refined form, featured a stylized image of pro wrestler Andre the Giant's face along with the word obey. These stickers were stuck in public places around the world, and they're an homage to these subliminal messages in They Live. When Nada is wearing the sunglasses, he can see that a healthy percentage of the population of Los Angeles is comprised of grotesque, bug-eyed aliens who are disguised as human beings. Stunned, he wanders into a grocery store. A television set broadcasts a press conference at which a high-ranking politician, possibly the US president, gives a speech about how America is newly optimistic with renewed faith in its leaders. The aliens have conquered us and we didn't even notice because these subliminal messages have lulled us into a sense of complacency. Nada encounters an alien disguised as a posh elderly lady lady in a fur coat. He reveals that he can see her true identity. Her expensive wristwatch turns out to be a communications device, and she alerts her fellow aliens that Nada can see them. A pair of cops, who are aliens in disguise, attempt to arrest Nada, and he ends up stealing their guns and killing them. Armed with a shotgun, he runs into a bank where he begins shooting all the aliens he can see. He discovers they can use their watch communicators to teleport to safety. Two things to point out about this bank scene. First, when Nada walks in, he announces, "I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum." This apparently was ad-libbed during filming by Roddy Piper, and it's a line that's so stupid and yet so hilarious that it immediately became famous and is still quoted today. Even if you've never seen They Live before, you've probably heard that line. The other thing to point out, Nada is our protagonist, and we've been following his story, so what he's doing here makes sense. But even still, there's something deeply frightening about a man with a shotgun walking into a public building and killing some people, but not others, because of a weird conspiracy theory that he wholeheartedly believes, but no one else has the ability to understand. There's nothing in They Live to indicate that viewers aren't supposed to take the aliens and the subliminal messages at face value, but even still, this scene raises at least the possibility that this could all be in Nada's head. While pursued by cops, Nada takes a hostage, a cable TV programming director named Holly. Holly is played by Meg Foster, who was the original Cagney in the early episodes of Cagney and Lacey before she was replaced by Sharon Gless. Foster is well known to Gen X kids for playing Eva Lynn in the 1987 live-action Masters of the Universe film, which starred Dolph Lundgren as He-Man. At gunpoint, Nada forces Holly to take him to her home, where he rants about sunglasses and aliens. He seems quite mad and dangerous, so Holly hits him with a wine bottle and knocks him out a high window. He winds up injured but alive, though the sunglasses are left behind with Holly. Nada returns to the construction site to ask Frank for help. Frank refuses, because Nada has, murdered a whole bunch of people. Frank is not reassured when Nada explains that they were all aliens. Nada returns to the alley where he stashed the box of sunglasses and retrieves them from a garbage truck. Frank follows him to give him his pay from the construction job, and Nada tries to convince Frank to put on the sunglasses to see the alien messages. Frank refuses, and Frank and Nada get into an epic 5.5-minute fist fight. The fight goes on forever, and it's pretty awesome. It's filmed very simply, with no rapid-fire cuts or fancy camera angles, and it's choreographed in a straightforward manner with no wire work or obvious stunt doubles. It feels like you're watching two big guys who are pretty good at fighting beating the hell out of each other. And the fight just keeps going and going until they're both so exhausted they can barely stand. Nada finally manages to subdue Frank long enough to force him to wear the sunglasses, whereupon Frank realizes that, nope, Nada isn't a crazy man. Aliens really have taken over Los Angeles. Nada and Frank hide out at a Fleabag hotel. They run into Gilbert, who invites them to a secret meeting of humans who have formed an organized resistance against the alien invasion. At the meeting, they're given contact lenses that replace the sunglasses. And I swear, both Roddy Piper and Keith David put in some solid work in this film, but I'm charmed by how utterly terrible they are at pretending to wear contact lenses. At the meeting, Nada and Frank learn more about the aliens' plan. The aliens have been working with human collaborators who are rewarded with money and increased social status in exchange for helping the aliens expand their influence over humans. The aliens are more opportunistic than violent. Their goal is to deplete the Earth of resources and move on before most humans even realized they were here. On the television set in the meeting place, the bearded man speaks about how the aliens have been encouraging humans to indulge in practices that increase the emissions of carbon dioxide, fluorocarbons, and methane in an attempt to make the Earth's environment closer to that of the aliens' home planet. This is a good reminder of something that often gets overlooked these days. While organized climate change activism didn't begin in earnest until the 90s and has only exploded into global prominence over the last decade, the science on climate change has been pretty much settled since 1988, which is the year the WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, established the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and is also the year They Live came out. The bearded man is talking about climate change. Much to Nada's surprise, Holly shows up at the resistance meeting, having apparently learned of the existence of the aliens through the sunglasses Nada left at her home. Heavily armed police officers raid the meeting and slaughter people indiscriminately. Nada tries to to protect Holly but is separated from her in the chaos. The cops corner Nada and Frank, but Frank figures out how to activate a wristwatch taken from one of the aliens, which opens up a portal into the aliens' secret underground lair. They find themselves in a fancy ballroom where aliens and human collaborators celebrate the successful raid. Nada and Frank are approached by the unnamed drifter played by George Buck Flower, who is wearing a tuxedo and who is a very happy and willing collaborator with the aliens who have made him very wealthy. Assuming Nada and Frank are collaborators as well, he takes them on a tour of the facility, which includes a television studio where alien news anchors broadcast subliminal messages to viewers. Frank and Nada realize the source of the broadcasting signal must be on the roof of the building above them, which turns out to be the cable network where Holly works. They raid the building, pursued by aliens, and try to make their way to the roof to destroy the signal. Nada is reunited with Holly, who managed to escape the police at the meeting. As they all head up to the roof, Holly reveals herself to be a collaborator, and she shoots and kills Frank. Nada prepares to destroy the station's satellite dish, which is broadcasting a signal which prevents humans from seeing the aliens in their true form. Holly orders Nada to step away from the dish, and he shoots and kills her before destroying the dish and dying in a hail of gunfire. With the dish destroyed, the illusion dissolves, and humans around the world are able to see the aliens in their true form at last. There is a lot going on in this fun and sometimes cheesy low-budget film about a beefy dude who saves the world from aliens. But that's what we should expect from John Carpenter, who has a knack for making wildly entertaining sci-fi and horror films that manage to shoehorn in a little social commentary along with a spectacle. I love John Carpenter, and his films have been so influential among Gen Xers that it was tough to decide which of his films from the 80s I should analyze first. I was torn between They Live, Escape from New York, The Thing, Big Trouble in Little China, and Prince of Darkness. They Live won out mostly because it seems uniquely appropriate to these troubled times. They Live was released in theaters in the last days of President Reagan's second term, and the film is meant as a scathing indictment of Reaganomics, which prioritized policies that supported the wealthy, like tax cuts and reduced spending on social programs, at the expense of the poor. In They Live, the American dream is dead. The rich are getting richer by exploiting the poor and exploiting the Earth's resources, and people like Frank and Nada are stuck in poverty in a system that doesn't allow any way of improving their circumstances that isn't corrupt or dishonest. The film is strongly anti-consumerism. Throughout They Live, we see people mesmerized by their televisions, which pummel them with advertisements for things that you can purchase to buy yourself a better life. They Live is an angry and paranoid film about widespread conspiracies, and in our current angry and paranoid age, where conspiracy theories can spread very easily across the internet, They Live has found new audiences, some of them very unfortunate. In the 32 years since They Live's release, its straightforward message of anti-consumerism has been misinterpreted and distorted. So much so that a few years back, John Carpenter tweeted angrily at neo-Nazis who claimed that the film supported anti-Semitic ideas. It's safe to assume Carpenter knows best what the film he wrote and directed is about, and per Carpenter, They Live is an indictment of yuppies and unrestrained capitalism. And while no one worries about yuppies too much in 2020, the social issues in They Live, such as unchecked climate change, politicians enthralled to powerful special interest groups, aggressive displays of police force, and big corporations laying off their bottom-rung workers while giving their top executives huge raises, certainly resonate with many of us today. I don't want to dump too much gravitas on They Live, which, despite the social commentary, is mostly a fun film about an alien invasion. At its heart, They Live is a film about chewing bubblegum and kicking ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum. Next time, we're going to wax on and wax off with Mr. Miyagi and Daniel LaRusso in 1984's The Karate Kid. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to see you then.